The Xarvian High Council convened under the glow of the Aurum lights, a phenomenon unique to our world of Xarvos. These lights, a byproduct of our advanced energy harnessing systems, bathe the chamber in hues of gold and violet, a perfect representation of our grandeur and chronicler superiority. I, Counselor Lyre, keeper of knowledge and chronicler of the ages, had been tasked with documenting the most perplexing species we had ever encountered, the humans of Earth. Counselors, I began, addressing the assembly, for eons we have studied the civilizations of the galaxy. We have nurtured the fledgling and dismantled the dangerous. Yet humanity defies classification. They are neither fledgling nor truly dangerous, but something altogether unique. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Counselor Vex, known for his scorn of anything deemed inferior, scoffed. Unique? They're primitives wielding sticks of fire. Their history is a litany of wars, destruction, and irrationality, hardly worth our attention, let alone our concern. I resisted the urge to snap at him. And yet, I replied evenly, these primitives, as you call them, have achieved something no other species in our records has. They have thrived in chaos. Our study of Earth began millennia ago, long before humans had learned to tame fire. We watched as they evolved, not just biologically, but socially, adapting to their volatile planet with remarkable ingenuity. Every disaster that would have annihilated a lesser species seemed only to make them stronger. When the earth burned, they turned the ash into fertile soil. When they fought among themselves, they forged tools of war so ingenious that we, the Xarvians, paused to reassess their potential. Their weaponry was crude by our standards, but their capacity for innovation under pressure was unparalleled. We marveled at their audacity. Humans not only survived in their chaos, but thrived because of it. Why? They are a paradox, I explained to the council. Their minds are both fragile and resilient. They create art to express their deepest vulnerabilities. Yet in battle, they exhibit a ferocity that defies logic. Counselor Vex remained unconvinced. Ferocity without reason is mere savagery. They are a species of overreachers, doomed to collapse under their hubris. We intervened on Earth numerous times, always covertly. In their early history, when they faced extinction-level events, we subtly altered their trajectory. We nudged an asteroid off course here, shielded them from a solar flare there. At the time, we justified these actions as preserving a potential resource. But there was more to it than that, though we Xarvians would never admit it aloud. There was something compelling about humanity, a spark we could not quite extinguish, nor fully understand. You see, only a moment at a time. Our first direct interaction came during their 20th century, an era of unprecedented technological and cultural upheaval. Humans had begun splitting atoms, a feat that alarmed even us. Such power in the hands of an unpredictable species was dangerous. Yet rather than obliterate themselves, they used this discovery to propel themselves into space, a battle-tightened planet where man is flawed. By the time humans set foot on their moon, our council was divided. They are reckless, argued Counselor Vex. Their ventures into space are the acts of a child playing with fire. And yet, I countered, they learn from their burns. A true concern emerged when humanity ventured beyond their solar system. Their technology was laughably primitive, yet their sheer determination carried them into the void. They began colonizing nearby systems, often in ways that baffled us. Instead of carefully selecting optimal planets, they terraformed hostile ones, reshaping entire worlds to suit their needs. It was an act of defiance against nature itself. The Xarvian High Council saw this as both a threat and an insult. Do they not see the inefficiency of their methods? Counselor Vex raged during one particularly heated session. They waste resources at an astronomical scale. But that was precisely the point. Humans did not value efficiency as we did. They valued possibility. They were dreamers, gamblers, willing to risk everything for the chance to achieve the impossible. And more often than not, they succeeded. Their rapid expansion brought them into conflict with other species. Unlike us, who relied on diplomacy or overwhelming technological advantage, humans relied on something far less tangible: their unpredictability. They formed alliances with species we deemed incompatible. They fought wars that should have been unwinnable. They turned their weaknesses into strategy. It was during one such conflict that the Xarvians found ourselves directly at odds with humanity. The Aram Expanse, a region rich in resources, became a flashpoint. We had long claimed it as our own, though we rarely exploited it. Humans, however, saw it as an opportunity. What began as a skirmish escalated into a full-scale conflict. Our fleets, superior in every measurable way, engaged theirs with confidence. Yet, battle after battle, the humans outmaneuvered us. They used tactics that defied logic, exploiting weaknesses we hadn't even realized existed. They turned our own technology against us, hacking into our systems with a creativity that bordered on madness. They fight like cornered beasts, one Xarvian commander reported. No, not beasts. Something more dangerous. They fight like beings who have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The turning point came during the siege of Clymar Station, one of our most fortified outposts. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, employed a strategy so audacious it left our analysts speechless. They sacrificed an entire fleet to create a gravitational anomaly, collapsing the station's defenses and securing victory. The cost to their side was staggering, yet their resolve remained unshaken. In the aftermath, I convened with the High Council to present my findings. Counselor Vex glared at me. And what do you propose? That we bow to these primitives? He asked. Not bow, I replied. Perhaps it is time we reconsider what it means to be superior. The council erupted into debate, but the truth was undeniable. Humanity had achieved what no other species had. They had forced us to question ourselves. Their chaos, their irrationality, their relentless hope, these were not weaknesses. They were strengths we could not replicate. As the council deliberated, I reflected on the irony. For millennia, we Xarvians had seen ourselves as the stewards of the galaxy, guiding lesser species toward a future we deemed worthy. Yet here we were, faced with a species that needed no guidance, only the space to carve their own path. As the council deliberated, as the council deliberated, I realized that the decision to surrender did not come easily. It was not a surrender in the traditional sense, but an acknowledgement that humanity was not an adversary to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with, a partner, however unpredictable, in the grand tapestry of the galaxy. As I recorded the final proceedings, I could not help but feel a sense of awe. Humanity, for all their flaws, had achieved something extraordinary. They had not only survived, but thrived, proving that even in chaos, there was a kind of order, a beauty we Xarvians had failed to see. And so, on that fateful day, the Xarvian High Council made its decision: we would surrender, not out of fear, but out of respect. For the first time in our history, we chose to embrace the unknown. Thus began a new chapter, one that would challenge everything we believed about ourselves and about the universe we thought we controlled. The Xarvian analysts called it statistical improbability. Our military strategists dismissed it as reckless audacity. But I, Counselor Leor, understood it for what it truly was: humanity's unparalleled resilience, a trait that could not be measured in probabilities or reasoned through with logic. This was the force that had propelled them to survive on a planet that defied its own inhabitants. And it was the force that now threatened to undo the very order of the galaxy. The Xarvian Council's initial encounters with humanity's military strategy were confounding. Where our fleets moved with precision and predictability, adhering to the most optimized battle algorithms, the human fleets were erratic, almost chaotic. They would attack when retreat seemed logical, retreat when victory was within their grasp, and sacrifice what should have been invaluable assets for no apparent gain. Yet it worked. Somehow their seemingly disorganized tactics left our fleets scrambling. Battles that should have been straightforward routes turned into costly engagements. When humans deployed guerrilla tactics against our supply lines, it was not with overwhelming force, but with uncanny timing, exploiting weaknesses we did not realize we had. One such example was the skirmish of Alidra 7. Our fleet had established a stronghold around the resource-rich moon, ensuring it could not be breached. Humans, unable to overpower our defenses, opted for a strategy we had not even considered. They detonated one of their own ships near the moon's surface, triggering a chain reaction that destabilized the moon's orbit. The resulting gravitational shifts forced our fleet to withdraw, and though the moon was rendered uninhabitable, the humans declared it a victory. "They are like the fires of a star," observed Xarvan Fleet Commander Tilvar after the battle, "uncontrollable but capable of consuming anything in their path." Resilience was not merely a matter of strategy for the humans. It was embedded in their culture, their psyche. Even in the direst circumstances, they refused to concede defeat. During the siege of Clymer Station, our forces decimated a human fleet, reducing it to scattered fragments. Yet, in the aftermath, we discovered escape pods filled with survivors who had deliberately crash-landed on nearby asteroids. Without food, water, or oxygen, they survived long enough to be rescued by reinforcements. When asked why they had not surrendered, one of their officers, a grizzled man with a mechanical arm, responded simply, "We don't know how." Their endurance extended beyond battlefields. We observed them rebuilding cities obliterated by natural disasters, replanting forests reduced to ash, and reforming alliances shattered by betrayal. While other species might crumble under such relentless adversity, humans seemed to grow stronger. Their capacity to adapt, to learn, and to rise again was their greatest strength and our greatest challenge. Their unity, or lack thereof, was another enigma. Xarvian society operated under a single collective will, each individual's actions contributing to the greater good. In contrast, humanity was fractured, divided into nations, factions, and ideologies. This division should have been their downfall, but instead it became their secret weapon. Human diversity bred creativity. Where one faction failed, another succeeded. One leader faltered, another rose. During the conflict over Varnak's Prime, human factions initially fought among themselves, each vying for control of the resource-rich planet. Xarvian observers dismissed them as hopelessly divided. But when we entered the fray, they united against a common enemy. It was a tenuous alliance fraught with mistrust and infighting, yet it held long enough for them to drive us back. In our post-battle analysis, Xarvian tacticians struggled to comprehend this phenomenon. Their lack of cohesion should be a weakness, remarked Counselor Bex. Yet, they wield it like a weapon. How do you fight an enemy that thrives on its own contradictions? To understand humanity's resilience, I sought to delve deeper into their history, their art, their philosophies. What I discovered was a culture steeped in paradox. They revered logic and reason, yet celebrated emotion and intuition. They pursued peace, yet glorified war. They sought to conquer nature, yet cherished its beauty. I became particularly fascinated by their stories. In their fiction, humans often portrayed themselves as underdogs facing insurmountable odds, yet emerging victorious through sheer willpower and ingenuity. These tales were not mere entertainment. They were a reflection of their worldview, a testament to their belief in the impossible. To them, every challenge is a story waiting to be told, I explained to the council. Every setback is an opportunity for redemption. They do not fear failure. They embrace it as a step toward success. Counselor Vex sneered. You romanticize their recklessness. What you call resilience, I call folly. But even he could not ignore the mounting evidence. Humanity's resilience was not a fluke. It was the cornerstone of their survival. The Xarvian Council's resolve was truly tested during the Battle of Erythrea, a confrontation that would go down in history as the defining moment of our conflict with humanity. The Erythrean system, rich in rare minerals, was a critical strategic asset. Both sides knew that control of the system could tip the balance of power. The Xarvian fleet outnumbered and outclassed the human forces by a significant margin. Victory seemed inevitable. Yet, as the battle unfolded, the humans revealed their trump card, an experimental weapon they called the Entropy Cascade. It was a device of crude design, prone to catastrophic failure, yet devastatingly effective. The weapon disrupted our fleet's energy systems, leaving our ships vulnerable. The human fleet paid a heavy price for their gambit. Many of their ships were destroyed and their casualties were staggering. Yet they achieved what we had deemed impossible. They forced the Xarvian fleet to retreat. In the aftermath of Erythrea, I convened a special session of the High Council. We must accept the truth, I declared. Humanity's resilience is not a liability, but an asset. It is the reason they have survived against all odds, and it is the reason we cannot defeat them. Counselor Vex bristled. You suggest we surrender? Not surrender, I replied. Adapt. If we are to coexist with humanity, we must learn from them. Their resilience, their unpredictability, their capacity to endure. These are traits we must embrace, not fear. The council was divided, as it had always been on the matter of humanity. But the tide was turning. Even the staunchest opponents of humanity could not deny the evidence. Humanity's resilience was not merely a survival mechanism, it was a force of nature, one that could not be extinguished. As I recorded the proceedings of that fateful session, I could not help but feel a sense of awe. Humanity, for all their flaws, had achieved something extraordinary. They had defied the odds, challenged the impossible, and emerged stronger for it. In their resilience, I saw a reflection of the universe itself. chaotic, unpredictable, yet bound by an underlying order. Perhaps that was humanity's greatest lesson to us, that even in the face of chaos, there is hope, and in hope, there is strength. Look at her. In hope, there is strength. Thus, the stage was set for the final chapter of our story, a chapter that would redefine the relationship between the Xarvians and humanity and reshape the destiny of the galaxy. The Xarvian High Council chamber was uncharacteristically silent. It was not the silence of calm deliberation or careful calculation that typically defined our gatherings. Instead, it was the silence of unease, of realization, of something alien to us, doubt. For centuries, we had ruled the galactic expanse as its supreme strategist, its most advanced species. And yet, here we stood, forced to confront a truth that no algorithm could reconcile. The humans had achieved the impossible. The aftermath of the Battle of Erythrea had left scars on both sides. The Xarvian fleet, though intact, was demoralized. Our once invincible reputation had been shattered. Humanity, on the other hand, celebrated what they called a Pyrrhic victory. Their fleets were diminished, their losses grievous, but their spirits remained unbroken. They did not see Erythrea as a setback. They saw it as a turning point. For the Xarvian Council, it was clear that the war could not continue. Humanity's resilience and ingenuity made them an unpredictable adversary, one that could not be subdued through conventional means. Our resources were finite, and every skirmish drained them further. Yet, the concept of surrender was antithetical to Xarvian culture. We had never conceded defeat, not in 1,000 cycles of galactic dominance. It was Counselor Leor who first voiced what we all feared to admit. We cannot defeat them, he said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of his words. Not through strength, nor strategy. To persist in this conflict is to ensure mutual destruction. Counselor Vex bristled. And what do you propose, that we bow to these primitives? Not bow, Leor replied, but perhaps we should listen. And so, after much debate, an unprecedented decision was made. A delegation of Xarvian counselors would meet with humanity's leaders to negotiate terms. It was not a surrender, not officially. It was a discussion, a diplomatic overture, words carefully chosen to preserve our pride. But beneath the semantics, we all knew the truth. This was humanity's victory. The meeting was set on neutral ground, a small moon orbiting the binary stars of the Nibbala system. The Xarvian delegation arrived first, our ships gleaming with technological perfection, our counselors adorned in ceremonial attire that reflected the light of the twin suns. We were the picture of order and refinement. The humans arrived late, as was their custom. Their ships were an eclectic mix of designs, some sleek and modern, others patched and repurposed from previous conflicts. Their leaders, too, were a study in contrast. They were not uniform in appearance or demeanor. There were men and women of varying ages dressed in a blend of military and civilian attire. Their faces bore the marks of hardship, scars, wrinkles, and expressions that spoke of battles fought both on and off the battlefield. The leader of their delegation, a woman named Admiral Sophia Reyes, stepped forward. She was not tall by Xarvian standards, nor did she exude the calm precision we valued in leadership. But there was something in her eyes, a fire that commanded attention. "Shall we begin?" she said, her tone neither hostile nor conciliatory. It was matter of fact, as if she knew the weight of the moment, but refused to be overwhelmed by it. The negotiations were unlike any the Xarvians had ever conducted. Humans argued passionately, their voices rising and falling with emotion. They interrupted one another, challenged each other's ideas, and sometimes seemed on the verge of collapse. Yet somehow they reached consensus. It was chaos, but it was a chaos that worked. Admiral Reyes laid out humanity's terms. They were not unreasonable. They sought coexistence, not domination. They asked for recognition as equals, for access to resources, and for the cessation of hostilities. In return, they offered their own technological advancements, their expertise in terraforming, and their willingness to form an alliance against greater threats that loomed in the galaxy. "We're not asking for much," Reyes said. "Just a chance to prove that we're worth more as allies than as enemies." It was a simple argument, one that Xarvian logic could not easily refute. Yet, for all its simplicity, it was difficult to accept. To acknowledge humanity as equals was to admit our own fallibility, our own vulnerability. It was to admit that we too could learn. The negotiations stretched on for days, each side presenting their cases, their counter-arguments, their visions for the future. But the turning point came not from words, but from a gesture. During a break in the talks, Admiral Reyes approached Counselor Lior. She carried with her a small object, a book, worn and faded, its edges frayed with age. She extended it toward him. The constable said, "Lady Exodor de Besarai Satio. Data Seterai Simrakatata Solea. Shadata Sabuto Sekavie Linor." "This belonged to my father," she said. "He was a scientist, a dreamer. He always believed we'd find others out there in the stars. He died before he could see it happen. But he left this behind. A story about the first explorers who dared to reach beyond their world." Lior hesitated, uncertain of the significance of the gesture. Xarvian culture did not place much value on physical relics. Our history was stored in vast data repositories, perfectly preserved and easily accessible. But as he took the book from her hands, he felt its weight. Not just its physical weight, but the emotional weight it carried. "One time, and then I was wrong." Tears swam unsuspectedly down her cheeks. "Come a while, Camille. Why give this to me?" he asked. "Because it's what we are," Razor replied. "We're explorers, dreamers, survivors. And if we're going to share this galaxy, you need to understand that about us." It was a gesture of vulnerability, of trust, and in that moment, Lior understood something fundamental about humanity. Their strength did not come from their technology or their strategy. It came from their ability to connect, to find meaning in the intangible, to forge bonds that transcended logic. So, Shipman Lord Thronian, the Xarvian Council voted unanimously to accept humanity's terms. It was not an easy decision, but it was the right one. The war was over, and in its place, a fragile alliance began to take shape. Nihilus. For humanity, the alliance was an opportunity to prove themselves on a galactic stage. For the Xarvians, it was a chance to learn, to adapt, to grow in ways we had never imagined. Together, we began to face the challenges of a galaxy that was far larger and more dangerous than either of us had ever realized. As I reflect on those days, I am struck by the irony of it all. The Xarvians, the most advanced species in the galaxy, were brought to their knees, not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by a species that dared to defy the odds, to challenge the impossible, Humanity's greatest weapon was not their ships or their weapons, it was their spirit. And so the day we surrendered to the humans was not a day of defeat, it was a day of transformation. A day when two species, so different yet so alike, chose to set aside their differences and build something greater together. It was the day we truly began to understand what it meant to be part of the galaxy's tapestry, not as conquerors or rivals, but as partners, bound by the shared dream of a future among the stars.